Welcome to episode 45 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre, featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, stage managers, producers, and more. If you'd like to be a guest on Stageworthy or just want to drop me a line, you can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you enjoy the podcast, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. My guests are Lindsey Middleton and Ben Hayward, who appear in Theatre by Committee's upcoming production of their Fringe hit Faith, starting October 19th at St. Luke's United Church in Toronto.
So Faith.
Yes.
The play, not the concept. Where did the idea from that come from?
It was a script that I originally wrote when I was 18, and I was like really mad about religion. I felt like I'd been duped. That sort of like standard teenage, like, oh my god, everybody lied to me about God. This is so bullshit. And I don't know why it came out in the voice of like an angry teenage girl. I guess because I didn't want it to be me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to, couch it in something. And it wasn't a very good play, and I just sort of like put it in a drawer and never looked at it again. And then a year and a half ago now, I pulled it out of the drawer and was like, there's some good stuff here actually. Like if David gets rewritten and I add some more contrasting opinions and stuff, then this could be a cool play. So then I started working on it again, and that's how it became its current form.
What was it like revisiting something that you wrote when you were basically a teenager?
It was really interesting for me because now the way the play works is all of Faith's ranting is as written when I was 18. None of that changed.
Okay.
Some of the bridging monologues and all of the beat poetry stuff and all that got added in. That didn't used to be there. And then in Faith's more like charitable, lucid moments where she sort of sees things clearly or is maybe nice to somebody, or some of that stuff got tweaked. But most of her religious ranting, her talking about her dad and her mom are still in my original teenage voice. Everything else is new. So the play is now like a dialogue with my teenage self. It's like I'm having an argument with me from 7 years ago.
Yeah. Were you raised in a religious household, and then when you were a teenager, you were like...
I was raised in a mixed religious household. Like my mom thought it was important to go to church, mostly based on community. Like if you grilled her on any of the specifics of Christianity, she would have absolutely no idea. She knows the like picture book Bible stuff, like the big stories, but like I had an argument with her about taking the sacrament and whether or not she thought that it was transubstantial or consubstantial or whatever. And she had no idea what any of that was. And she was like, I don't know, it's just like it's symbolic. And I'm like, but it's not symbolic. Like it says in all their books that it's his literal blood and body, and it's just like either or it's symbolic in a very important way, but like it's not what you're saying, like it's a fun little ritual we do. Like no, we're eating Jesus. So she's that kind of a religious person. And my dad was an atheist. Well, not atheist, like sort of very uncommitted agnostic, who never went to church. So everybody at our church thought that I came from like a single parent home, because my dad was like, yeah, whatever, go visit your imaginary friend. And then so I got like really into the community of church and really got quite religious. By the time I was like 15, I was like bugging my dad about his immortal soul and like trying to live faithfully and doing like Bible study and shit. And then that's a new part that I've added because I didn't have the clarity in mind at the time, was her talking about the youth minister. We got a youth minister who was like a really hardline biblical realist or whatever you call those people, where it's like all of the Old Testament happened as written, like
fundamentals.
Yeah, like that's exactly what it is. So I was sort of like, okay, so. Sit through the Tower of Babel talk, and that's all fine and good. And then you sit through the Noah's Ark talk, and that's all fine and good. And then you sit through the Adam and Eve thing, and you're like, lady, you can't possibly believe that there were two people. Otherwise, what's the deal? Incest didn't matter then, but now it matters for some reason. Like, how can you possibly think the world is 6,000 years old? Oh wait, oh no, oh my God, none of this is real. Yeah. And so, like, I left shortly after that.
You must probably lasted a little shorter than I did. My mother was just right where I didn't think that the House of Cards did not tell for me until I was like 1920.
Yeah.
When I really started to ask questions. But until then, it was so easy just to be like, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, especially when most of it sort of makes sense, and you think like, yeah, okay, like be a good person, don't kill people. These all seem like rules I can be okay with.
Yeah.
Get together and sing. You know, I could never quite figure out why the songs weren't cool, but that was fine. And I never got why Christian rock bands couldn't just be good rock bands.
Yeah.
Oh,
that used to bother me when I was a kid.
Because
I would be like, man, I want to like Reliant K or whatever it was, Hillsong.
I was into that too.
And it's like, but they're so bad. Why are they bad? And
the thing is, as somebody who grew up with Christian rock in the 80s, Reliant K is a really good band
compared to Christian rock.
Like Resurrection Band or like Striper or something like that back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So, but it's still the same question. Why can't it be good music?
No, I still can't figure that out.
Lindsay, did you come from a similar background, or were you?
Very similar. Yeah. Like, my mom still goes to church every Sunday with my grandma and my aunt, and my dad just, like, avoids it at all costs. And my mom is still, we had a great, like, dialogue after seeing the show about, like, well, do you think this is this, and blah, 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 and she was like, I think having her own realizations about things, and she was like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, okay.
Oh, you always know when you hit something.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and I was like, no, but that's the point of the show. So yeah, almost very identically similar. Where I I got confirmed, and I was doing like Bible studies. I went to Bible camp. And then I think it was my older brother that influenced me more, because he was always like vehemently against it for so long. And then I don't know if we just had a chat one day, and then I was just like, oh, if he doesn't have to go, I don't want to go either. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and then I just have never gone back since I was like 13 or 14. Yeah.
How did your family react to seeing the play? How did your mom react to it? I'm not wanting to talk about
Yeah. No, I was actually kind of nervous about my family seeing it, because a lot of the women are very religious. But like, they're always very supportive of whatever I do. My grandma said, quote unquote, not my favorite, but good job. And my grandpa, actually, I haven't told you this, I've been meaning to tell you this. So after my grandpa saw it, he was so fascinated by like how it all worked. Like, and he's seen a lot of shows I've done, but there's a lot of like choreography in the show and things like that. And he kept asking my mom on the ride home, like, did she have like a map on stage of like where to put the chairs and like all these things? And he was convinced you were a real minister. They had to tell him like 5 times on the drive home that no, like Ben is Lindsay's friend, like they're actors, like he's not a minister. Like I think he kind of thought it was like maybe real. And then I went home like 2 weekends ago, and I saw my grandpa again. And he was like, well, how are you? And I was like, well, I'm doing that play you saw again. And he was like, that play was so good. Like, he loved it. And I was like, thanks. And then my dad was just silent on the matter. And then, my mom and I have had some, like, interesting, like, dialogues about it. And I'm excited for her to see it again in Toronto and then have even more conversation. Because she saw it twice in Hamilton.
Do you think that like, is it changing at all between the iterations in Hamilton and Toronto?
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff we had to edit out just for time's sake for Hamilton, because it was an hour. So I think Toronto's going to be like an hour 15 to 90 minutes. We don't really know.
Somewhere depending on, because there's about 95 minutes of script. Mm-hmm. Some of it we've agreed upon is kind of redundant and doesn't need to be there. So it'll be depending on how much we want to have fun with things. And there was also some scene bridging stuff and some storytelling stuff that we wanted to spend more time on, and just because of the crunch of the Fringe, we were like, well, we can't do that anymore. Let's just cut that and not worry about it. So hopefully it'll be about half an hour longer. But
can you just for people who haven't seen it, what would you want somebody to know about faith before they see it?
The elevator pitch.
Yeah, I actually want people to know as little about faith as possible, except for that it deals generally with a teenage girl's crisis of religion and identity that happen at the same time. And that if those are the kinds of things that would interest you, which I assume most people are interested in, then you should come see it, because it's something that I think what has surprised me most about, let me rephrase, what has surprised me most about audience responses to the piece is the amount of people who come up afterwards and go like, that's exactly the way I felt, or, you know, that felt just like me. And I'm talking like, you know, 50-year-old men who say this. You know, it's not like 20-year-old girls come up and say this. There's like pretty much everybody who sees it identifies with this terrible anger but desire to have meaning at the same time.
And on the flip side of that, we've had a lot of people from the religious community come to it who also had very interesting views on the piece. Like, I was very nervous every night because I was from a very religious upbringing, and I was the one saying the majority of the more bold things against religion, and I was so nervous before every show because I was like, someone's gonna like heckle, or like, but they're religious, so maybe they won't. Like, they're supposed to be nice people, so maybe they won't do that. But we had a United Church.
She worked for the United Church
Gazette or
Review
something,
or magazine or whatever their magazine is, and she came up afterwards and was like, what an interesting depiction of a United Church minister, and like, we'd love to do a piece about you guys, and here's my card, and it's so terrible that he was tempted by that woman in that way. And I was like, did you watch the same play?
Yeah, and that's why it's interesting, like,
it's
how
cool
different
people of different faiths also respond. That's something I also want people to know, is that it's not just a 90-minute atheist diatribe.
No.
Because I think that faith does play a really important role in generating meaning for most of the human population, and I can't discount that. Yeah. And so I try in the play to give it a fair shake as much as possible.
But I think I saw, if not your first performance in Hamilton, one of the first, and it asks a lot of questions. She doesn't just like go anti, she's like questioning a lot. So there's a lot of back and forth. So it's not like one note for her. There's faith asks a lot of important questions. And of course, there's a lot of people who go to church and stuff who don't like to ask those questions, but they're important questions to ask. So when, just to get it out there early on, when are you mounting the play in Toronto?
So the show is running October 19th to 30th, every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at 8 p.m. And we're actually doing it inside St. Luke's United Church, which is awesome. That's awesome. Very excited about it. It's at the corner of Carlton and Sherbourne, and it's going to be taking place inside their chapel as well, which is even more exciting. Nice. So yeah,
you can get tickets online at
tickets
theaterbycommittee.com.
Yeah.
Or search it on Brown Paper Tickets.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's pretty cool that the church, because we sent it to a bunch of churches, and it was a lot of like initial interest of like, oh, we've never had a play, and this would be so great. Thanks for thinking of us. And then, can we read the script? Yes, and then just
nothing.
Yeah.
And then St. Luke's was like, yeah.
They were like the Hail Mary. I was kind of like, I don't know. They were like last on my list for some reason. I was like, okay, I'll just call them because I didn't have an email, and I just hate calling people. And I was like, oh, why? So I was like, hi, we have this show. And then she was like, yeah, it all sounds great. And I was like, yeah, but we say this and do this. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to come in and meet with you because this seems like too good. And like, we could actually afford it. Like, I could not believe how expensive churches were to rent. I was shocked doing this research to try to find a venue. I was like, holy cow, it's a moneymaker to rent a venue there. So yeah. We got something though.
Yeah, I think that a lot of churches are rented for weddings and things.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is like, and well, we didn't rent the actual.
Not the sanctuary.
Not the sanctuary. We rented the chapel. Which has all the decked outedness of the sanctuary. It's just condensed, which is actually better for us because we're never going to be able to fill a sanctuary. Sanctuary's like 400 seats. Like, I have high hopes, but they're not that high.
Yes.
We've already sold some tickets. I got the ticket report today. I did too. I was like, wow, that's good.
In promoting the show in a Hamilton Fringe situation, walking up to people and talking about the show, I had, my show was about religion in some ways, and I had one of two reactions. People would I tell them what the show is, and they go, ha, yeah. And I got, no. People would be like, God, no, and they would pass it back because it was about religion.
Yeah.
Did you find that? Did you find that pitching the show to some people was just like the topic was a non-starter?
I found that the conversation didn't go anywhere. We could always sort of get in the door with like, it's about a girl who's struggling with stuff, and like, yeah, cool. And then as soon as it was she's struggling with religion, it was sort of, yeah, it was either one of two. And it's weird the way people shut down about it. It's like I guess it's like walking up to somebody on the street though and being like, can you talk about your politics with me right now? And they're like, you just go away. Or they have a ton of really well thought out things that they can tell you. What I was surprised about is when you talk to people about the show, that it's not a certain type of person who always says no. Like, I found that some people who were quite religious wanted to talk to us about the show and others didn't. And some people who were really, didn't seem like they had any religious leanings at all were much more likely to say no to talking about the show than religious people. But that might be the type of person who is religious versus the type of person who isn't.
Yeah. I definitely found that there were people who were, I think the people who immediately reacted with a no were people who were not religious and uninterested in speaking about it.
Yeah.
But they would like the show because it actually plays to all the things they probably don't want to talk about and throws in their face and opens up the discussion of like, yeah, this is
and
where
I think
like
the
there's some
not
fault lines.
talking about it is almost as damaging as not questioning the faith when
for
you're silent, right?
100%.
And that's the whole point of like rewriting faith was that it was more about questions and debate than it is about like one side's wrong, one side's right. Which I actually borrowed from religion. It's just catechism. It's just there's no like right answers for me. You're not just named apostles. But.
Yeah. Have you always written plays? Or?
Yeah, pretty well. Yeah, actually, like
since I've known you.
Since before university. So yeah, that's my whole adult life now. And still do.
7 years.
7 years, a couple days ago. Wow. Facebook told us.
Yeah.
Facebook is good for telling
Facebook's like, you're fucking old. And I'm like, thank you, Facebook.
7 years ago.
Well, now Facebook tells me that I've known this person for so long and I actually add on years. So I'm like, wait, I knew them before Facebook. So.
And then they send you like a really awkward video with like the worst photos you've ever taken.
Yeah.
Just you together.
Always the worst.
Just you looking terrible.
Or like the same photo 3 times and you're like, we can't be that good of friends.
No.
We only have one
no,
photo.
we have one photo that recurs.
So, do you remember how old you were when you started writing plays?
Yeah. I wrote my first play when I was 15. And it was it was for this thing that my school did called Showcase. You could just like write a little thing. It had to be less than 20 minutes. And you could just, if you could get students together to do it, it was totally student-driven and produced, and and they would like clear it, obviously. But then if you passed that, then you were in, and you could perform your thing. And so my thing was called Embrace It, and it was 9 minutes long, and it was about this kid getting braces because I was really upset about braces, and it was like because I got braces and I felt like I had been shafted. Because I got braces really late, and I didn't need them. I had one crooked tooth in the bottom, and my mom was like, "Well, you're gonna have to have braces." And I was like, "Oh, I can't. Like my social life is pretty precarious as it is. I can't add braces to this." And then so I thought, what'll save me socially? I'll write a play about getting braces, and then everybody will think I'm cool. And that worked terribly, but the play was actually pretty funny, and then I had really a lot of fun doing it, and I was like, this is like a thing I could get on board with. And then later that year, my school did a collective about the murder of Rena Burke in BC, and so I wrote for that, and I was, and it's kind of just been ever since in increasing length. So I started with 9 minutes, and now the latest one is unwieldy and too long.
Lindsey, what drew you to theater?
Hilariously, I started at my church because my mother taught Sunday school, which meant she also would do the we would do a play at the church like 3 times a year maybe. Like I remember my first play was the nativity scene, and for some reason there was a lion in this version, which was of course me because I had to be the unique lion child at 4 years old. So no, I remember starting like at my church. I actually did my first musical I ever did was about Jonah, like the story of Jonah getting eaten by the whale and like living in the whale. There's a video. It's excellent. I played Sassy Angel #1. My audition song was Britney Spears. I don't know. It was just always something that since I was a child, I was just I don't know, I just had to be praised and validated and looked at, I guess. It was just something that was in my like need. And then I started doing like musical theater at 13. But then I think in high school is when I really kind of seriously understood what acting was, because I had a phenomenal drama teacher. We both had amazing drama teachers, which I think is why we do what we do. And it kind of just made me realize what it is we're doing and the impact you can have, because that's kind of what I like to do. I like to do theater that like has a message and has an impact, and I'm obsessed with this show because I think it does have that for a lot of people. And yeah, then it just kind of took off, and I haven't stopped, and just keeps going, and yeah, it's exciting.
When did you figure out that it was a thing that you wanted to do with your life as opposed to just something you wanted to do part-time in high school?
Well, it always said it. Like, if you go through my, like, kids' stuff, until I was 8, I wanted to be a vet until I was 8, and then my dad was like, you realize you have to kill the animals sometimes, and then that dream died. My dad put it real, like, black and white for me, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. He's like, that's part of the job. And I was like, great, I'll be an actor. And from then on, but yeah, I was in high school when I was in grade 10, we did a UNESCO play, and which was so different because I've been doing musicals and biblical shows up until then. And we did this UNESCO play, and it just kind of like changed my outlook on everything. And I was like, I have to do this. I have to like just have that feeling of when it's, you just, I don't know, you can't describe it, that good feeling on stage. And then I just feel like I'm always like chasing that high, that like euphoria that you get, because you don't get it every time. Like, I find once during a run, you get that one show that you're like, I was not here, I was like the character, I was somewhere else, and like I just love that feeling. And so
Did you have many of those when you were performing Faith in Hamilton?
Faith was one of the scariest shows I've ever done, because I feel like I'm doing stand-up comedy for a lot of it, which is not something I've ever done. Like, I think I'm mediocrely funny, but I never label myself as like a comedian or even a comedic actor. I feel like there were definitely some shows where it happens. I find it's normally when I have like certain people in the audience that are just really close to my heart, and I don't know, you feel like you're just doing it for them and you're not like, I don't know, it's like a different thing. But yeah, there's definitely those moments in most shows, except the really bad ones you wind up in that you're just like, oh, get me off the stage.
I mean, a lot of what you do in Faith is monologue to the audience where you see from.
Yeah, they are.
And that makes Faith almost partially a one-woman show with also another actor that you do some scenes with.
We call him my prop.
Yeah, we joke that it's a 1.5-person show. There's not. You don't get David's story, right? You only get him through the lens of Faith. And that's the most consistent thing that people say to me afterwards. It's like, well, how come I don't get David's story? And it's like, because it's not David's story. And like, for me, it's important that Faith is the proprietor of the story, that you get that she's lying to you, and that, you know, that things are not exactly as she says.
She is the one telling the story.
Yeah.
So to suddenly get David's story from his point of view did not make a whole lot of sense.
No, it's a different play.
Yeah.
It's...
It did, because performing, because I did the show that I did in Hamilton is my first time doing a solo show ever, and I had one show where I felt like everything was firing, and it was like the audience was right there, and the audience was there a lot of the time, but it was one show where they were all there, and I went on stage after that show and I wept for like 10 minutes after that show, because it was just so overwhelming and amazing. But you don't always get that. I think for me, the note that my director gave me was just concentrate on telling the story. Don't worry about how the last show went. Just do this one. And that was like the best piece of advice he could have given me
for sure
for that show. So that was, I mean, you went through, like, starting with church and then moving on through into high school. Did you go to post-secondary?
Yeah, that's where we met. We both went to U of T and Sheridan College. They have a joint program where you do 2 degrees at the same time. Madness, but a lot of fun. And yeah, that's where we met. And then we just kept...
Yeah, we were like...
Thought he was cool on day one. He had a bright yellow shirt and he said a lot of inappropriate things. And I was like, wow, this guy's bold. I think I want to be his friend. So...
Yeah, no, we like platonically dated for first year.
Yeah, we definitely did. We definitely did.
Yeah, and then we just we've been friends ever since, and we've been since the theater company started. Even when it was under a different name, we were in it. We always knew we wanted to work together because we're a good balance of things. I would be very happy to just like sit in the tub and read all day and write plays and never show them to anybody and just slowly disappear. So having somebody like
that's
Lindsey,
my worst nightmare.
Yeah, and having somebody like Lindsey in my life is really wonderful to call me and be like, get up and go do things, and you need to fucking work on things, and we need to do this. And then I'm around to tell you to sit down and have a nap and maybe think about it for a second.
And take care of myself.
Yeah,
have a bottle of wine.
So it's a good balance for a partnership.
That's good.
We talked about Lindsey's coming to theater. We talked briefly about your celebrated plays, but why plays? Why theater for you?
Okay, so this is unlike Lindsey. If you were to go back through my what I want to be when I grow up, I was like the only 10-year-old ever who was like, I want to be a cognitive psychologist. I was like super specific. I wanted to do psychoanalytic research, and then I was like, maybe that's a little bit heady, I don't know. So maybe I'll just do poli-sci and then law-verdashery with like a view towards politics later on in my life. And then I was like, I was not a normal kid. And then in high school, I was doing this that it was the first extracurricular that I'd ever done, and I was like, yeah, this is fun, but I never took it particularly seriously. And then I saw Daniel McIver's Monster at Buddies in Bad Times, and that was the moment where plays sort of clicked for me, where I was like, before it was just like fun sketches, and then in my school there was some cachet to it because the showcase was really well attended, and if you made people laugh, so there was social capital to it. But that was the first show where I was moved in a way that I had never felt in a movie or at a concert even, or at other live events. It was like I was like actually wrapped and on the edge of my seat with somebody in the same room, and it was so exciting and it was so meaningful. And so I was like, well, shit, I got to do that. That's the only thing I want to do now. And then that, of course, went away. I went back to school and was like, no, lawyer, that's a great job. Don't be that guy. That guy's insane. And then in my last year of high school, I was doing this show where I was a drag queen. And I was like, I'd like nared my legs, and I had like tights and this like sweet Tina Turner dress, and like really glammed out makeup, and I like spirit combed my eyebrows away, and like had a Liza Minnelli wig and big fake boobs. And I was on stage doing this, and I sort of like went off on the night that we opened for the school and parents and stuff, and was like, I think I want to do this more than anything else, because otherwise this makes no sense. Like, if I don't want to do this professionally, why am I doing this? Like, this is, and my girlfriend was so upset at the time, because she was like, you're dressing up like a woman in front of the school, what's wrong with you, right? This is back when, this is still an issue socially. And I was like, it's because I want to do this more than anything. And so, that was like when I was like, I'm going to apply for theater school. Okay. And
so you hadn't planned to do theater school until then?
Never. Very, very sober career choices until then.
And then, did you apply just for the U of T, or did you?
No, I applied to U of T, I applied to George Brown, and I applied to York and Ryerson. Oh, I applied to all of them.
Oh, you did all of them? Yeah, you did.
And then I got into Ryerson, and I got into U of T, and everybody gets into York. And my mom told me that I couldn't go to George Brown because she wasn't going to pay for me to get a college diploma. That if I wanted to get a college diploma, then I could pay for that myself. But otherwise, they were going to help me with university. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that one. And then so I went to see Ryerson, and I talked to the guy who runs Ryerson. I don't even remember his name. He was such a and I hope he doesn't listen to this, or maybe it was a bad day.
If he does.
Yeah, but if he does, you were a dick, man. You were such a dick that day. You don't remember me. And he was just like, he just didn't have the time of day, and he was just like, and I asked him what kind of stuff we were going to be doing, and he was like, well, you'll be learning to act, and he was talking about like Shakespeare, like like an angel had shit into his mouth, and it was just the worst. And then I went to UT, and it was very cuddly.
Yeah.
And it was like, we don't trim the class size down. For me, that was really cool that they were honest about that like we only take 20 kids off the top, and then we don't lose any. Not like the York or the Ryerson model where they take like 40 kids and hope to lose half by the time you're done.
George Brown too.
Yeah.
George Brown.
They'll tell you to leave.
They hoped to end with 15 or less.
Yeah, and I think that's so fucking bogus. That, like, you can't deprive people of half of their education and then tell them that they're going to get the same meaningful experience outside, and we'll just read about it in a book, it'll be the same. Like, no, it won't. And there's a reason that you're keeping the other 15, so fuck off. Pick them from the start.
There was when they were at George Brown, they were letting you go. They were letting you go because we don't think this is for you. Like, it was not like you can get this from a book. It was like this.
You should not do this.
It was this program is not for you. But sometimes what they said, because people came to them when really young, they said,
life experience.
Go and take a year and then come back to us. And they had, and for some they were like, we will even just you come knock our own door, you'll come back in.
Right.
But go and live and then come back. But for many it was like, no. Which was like, and for some of us it was like every year, like you would sit down at Christmas and you'd sit down before the summer break and it would be like, all right, is this really a movie? All right, so what can I say to get me to stay in?
Yeah.
It was like crazy.
Yeah, and I didn't want that.
Yeah.
So that's why I picked U of T. And to be honest, it was a great education, and that's what I wanted it to be. I didn't want them to teach me how to do theater. I wanted them to teach me about theater. And in the end, I don't think we do theater that is anything like what we were taught how to do. We did very well-made fourth wall plays, and we've never done that as a company.
No.
And if anything, we're getting further and further.
When you say well-made plays, are you talking about the Jordan Tannehill well-made plays?
Yeah.
This is what we do. We can. This is the well-made play.
Yeah. I'm talking exactly about. And I too was unimpressed. Big ups, Jordan. It's a good book. But it's the boring Canadian drawing room or wishing it was a drawing room play. And some people do them very well. And I mean, like some of Michael Healy's well-made plays are actually good. And big ups to George F. Walker and Judith Thompson. Yeah. But for the most part, I think the Canadian canon sucks, and the way that we approach theater is boring, and we didn't want to do that.
Yeah,
and increasingly, I think, and if I'm going to posterity somewhere, that I think we really are doing cool stuff now. Finally, in the 10 years that I've been paying attention to theater, it has gotten way more interesting.
I kind of feel like I think you're right, but I think that it takes time.
Absolutely,
there's all these theater companies that are. Aside from Shaw and Stratford, there's these companies that are run by old folks who still want to do what they know, and you have to wait until the folks doing the indie theater sort of bubble up and take over.
Yeah,
and can do some really interesting stuff for those spaces.
Well, it's like Factory is having that renaissance in the last 2 years, right? Like Beyond the Great White North is something they could never have done 5 years ago.
No,
that's and now everybody's rah Factory because they did the Naked season and it was so good, and everybody's like, oh fuck, okay, maybe. And so now we're ready for Factory to be this new cool thing.
Yeah.
But I think you're right.
But it took a lot of time.
It took forever.
Yeah.
And that establishment is just hard to get out of the way, because theater is also one of the only careers you do till you die or give up.
Yes.
There's no retirement date.
I think we're doing a little better now because there's more venues to work with. And because it's not just Mirvish, then Factory, Tarragon, and Factory. Tarragon, Factory, Pastorai. There's also some storefront theaters. There was Unit 102. There's all these other spaces where you can do stuff, which is so amazing
and important to development of new work. I mean, but one of the things that really depresses me about Canadian theater is the idea that something that happens in an indie space can't happen anywhere else. And that's why I really like Outside the March and their stuff, is because they never do it at a space, so that you don't associate them with a particular venue or with a brand of theater. That it's just sometimes it's in an abandoned movie hall, other times it's in a parking lot. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
And to me, that seems very exciting. It's something we certainly think about all the time when we're picking venues.
When you're picking venues, I mean, venues was a barrier for a very long time in terms of getting a space, having to rent a space that costs $1,500 a week.
Yeah.
When that could be your whole budget for doing a show.
Yeah.
That's a huge barrier. But what are you looking for when you're looking for a venue?
I think it more just depends on the piece and what would suit the piece. Obviously, there's like restrictions of, well, how many people can we fit, and can we afford it, and what is like the electrical system like for lights, because we're going to be bringing those in, and that's always fun. But I think what we always look for is like, where would this show fit? Like, what is the point of doing a show outside of a theater, and like, what are we starting to say by doing it here?
Yeah, like faith in the chapel is like a pretty obvious connection.
Yeah.
And because the show is so interested in the sacred v profane dichotomy, then that works really well. For us, I think it's also like we had a lot of old semioticians who taught at our school, and so there was like a lot of like reading about the frame of the theater and what the place you do, how it informs the spectator before they come in. And I think that's something that we've internalized as a company, is like we want a space that is going to gear you towards a certain experience. So it either can be dissonant or complementary, but we want it to be something. So we did Line in the Streets in Glad Day Bookshop, which is this like beautiful warm space, and you walk upstairs and everything's super friendly, and then we had a plastic sheet that you walked through, and when you walked through the plastic sheet, there was this terrible graffiti all along the walls of garbage bags, and then there was a big pile of garbage and shit on the floor, and it was like, so we conditioned you to feel one thing, and then you feel something terrible when you walk in, and then that speaks to your experience in a fun way. And that's what we look for in spaces, is just, so like, you know, Glad Day wasn't the ideal space for that, but we used it in a way that we thought told the story better. So when we pick spaces, we're always cognizant of that. And we have like big company arguments about this all the time, about like, we can't just do it in this space because it's cheap. There has to be a reason.
What kind of reasons are you looking for? Like, for me, sometimes it is literally like, I can afford this space. Like, I've done stuff at some of the storefronts, just been like, I can afford this.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it work.
Well, that was our thing with Glad Day, is logistically it could fit the number of seats we had. We were new. We had a relationship with the owner, which was amazing. We had a great time working out of that space. But then it was what Ben was saying of just like turning it on its head. Like,
yeah, so because we settled on Glad Day because of cost restraints and just feasibility, we placed a ton of emphasis on modifying the space to make it not Glad Day anymore. That for us, it was like, if we're going to do, we can't just do like chairs in a row and then a couple lights and have them be like Line in the Street. Right. It's got to be immersive, and the space needs to be its own assertive thing. And I think it worked. I mean, I think we ended up.
I loved it.
It was an insane amount of work.
Kelly Anderson designed it, and it was.
Oh yeah,
I remember walking into the space finally after. Like, I came later in the day and a lot of stuff had been put up, and I was like, oh my god, like, I wasn't even expecting this, so it's amazing how it transformed.
Frightening.
Yeah.
And it was nice.
What are you guys looking forward to about revisiting Faith again?
I like David.
I like Faith.
David is not like me. I'm really angry. Which you can't maybe hear in my voice, but just if you know me as a person, I'm just like, everything is shit and it's all corrupt and there's all just like, oh, and the more you look into shit, the worse it gets, you know, that sort of. And David has figured out a way to be at peace with himself and to allow dissonance in his life without it wrecking his day. And I love that. I feel very calm for like an hour.
I like being scared. That's why it was so refreshing to do this show, because this will be, I think, like my 7th show this year, like doing this remount, and it was the first one that I was like, ooh, I like have like some deep feelings going on backstage, like before I do this. Like I was like a sweaty like monster of mess and like shakes, and I was like, this is so nice to feel, because I've been doing this for like over 10 years, and to have that feeling again was really refreshing. Yeah. So that I look forward to, but also I always just look forward to the conversation after. And I don't mean like, did you like the play? I hate that conversation. I like the conversation of like, what did you feel? What didn't you get? Like, who did you side, especially with this play?
Yes.
Because we've had such contrasting things of, oh, I hated Faith, or I didn't like David, or like this one was in the wrong, or I loved them both. Like we have people like really angry and walked out, and then we also had people crying because they were just sympathizing with the characters so much. And I love that. That's why I love Ben's writing, because it gives you so much that the audience can take away from it. And it's so personal when you see a show, what you feel. And I just love hearing that from people.
Did you have people walk out of the show?
We did.
We had one that I remember.
One lady walked out in a kind of like aggressive, loud way.
Well, they always do.
Yeah.
It's almost never a very surreptitious.
Yeah.
It's especially if it's an offended, like I'm offended. There's the I don't like this play where you sort of slip out.
Yeah, like snake.
She lasted a long time.
Yeah, she lasted
I think
the play was an
lasted
hour. She
up
lasted
until-
45 minutes in.
Really? Does Jesus have to be fuckable for us to like him?
No, it was past that.
Is it?
Because that's like that's my line where I take like a
That's
deep breath
that's
before I
the
say
one
it.
where I think somebody might have an issue of like, don't
Start
talk about
heckling.
fucking Jesus. And I'm like, but he's so sexy, and why? He's always so sexy.
Yes.
So she lasted beyond that.
Yeah.
Something else. Yeah, I don't know what it was.
I don't know, but I just remember being like, oh, someone's leaving. Which, is really nice in this show because Ben has granted me the liberty. There is a script. And a lot of people would say this is, a lot of my best friend went, I didn't know what was the script and what you were improvising. Which is a huge compliment to me because this girl knows me extremely well. But basically, Ben's giving me the script and said, if anything exciting happens, go with it. We had one show where the audience, they could have not been there. There was no laughs, nothing. And we're used to, some pretty, good chuckles. And when they finally laughed, 10 minutes in, I was like, oh, thank fuck you're alive. Didn't know you guys were out there, which, kind of loosened them up. Because I know a lot of people always say to me after they see theater, that they never know when they're allowed to laugh, where the permission comes from.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, great, I will grant you that permission that this show is dark comedy, but I would love if you laughed at it now. So that loosened them up a bit. That was also when my mom brought 11 of her United Church friends to the show. So it was a very fun one for me.
Did they have a lot to say after the show?
Nope, they were pretty quiet on the one lady, actually, because my mom worries like I do, and she phoned up her friend, who I guess was the most religious of the bunch, and it said, I noticed you were really quiet on the drive home, I just really hope, everything was okay after seeing it, and her friend was like, no, I actually was reflecting a lot, because, and this woman's in her 60s, she was like, I've been having a lot of new thoughts about religion and things like that, and the play actually stirred up a lot of things that I've been thinking about that I'm challenging in myself and my view on religion. So I thought that was really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. So
that being said, my grandmother is still not coming to this. I'm inviting her. She's asked every time. She's not coming.
I'll bring her.
Come.
I had relatives who were like, my mom was going to go, and they were like, your mom will tell me that I should go after. And I'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. You can come.
yeah, my family normally come to everything except lying on the streets. That was the only time I've ever censored my family from a show.
Did you tell them not to?
I allowed 2 of them to come out of the normal 18 that show up, and I was like, just you and you, because there was a lot of content in that show. I don't know why my casting seemed to go
your casting was just
real
sexually pathetic person.
sexually dark.
She played both women who were in abusive relationships in the show.
Yeah.
And it was just top to bottom bad times for Lindsay.
Yeah.
I got to play
didn't need to see this.
the cheerful gay characters, so I was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, Ryan.
But Hannah got fun characters, but you were
I got-
unfortunately the sad
all
ladies.
those ones. Woohoo.
Yeah, and you ended up in your underwear in that show too.
Yeah, it's a
That's
theme.
another great reason to come see Faith. You want to see Lindsey Middleton in her underwear?
Yeah.
It's
a tagline.
I'm going to ask. Well, I mean, it is a tagline. Maybe not
Not no.
But since that's come up,
Yeah.
is that something that you were at all concerned about in this show, or that were like, I'm going to take my clothes off, or is it?
No, we had the discussion of full frontal.
How naked?
Well, with me, nudity. I've done things where I took off all of my clothes, and it's all just about what the art or the message or the thing is saying. If it was American Pie, no way in hell am I going to do that.
Yeah.
But if it's something that there is a purpose
Yeah.
and a driving force behind it, I'm like, yes, this supports the message that the show is saying. Then I'm all for it, because to me it's like Killer Joe. If you saw that last winter, I thought it was amazing how they did all the nudity, because there was a lot of nudity in that show, but it was done in such a tasteful but needed way, because that's who the characters are. And I was like, is Faith this 17-year-old girl someone who's gonna get like fully naked? I was like, no, but I think she'd go out and buy some like La Senza girl like bra and panties and then be like, this is my idea of being sexy at 17. But yeah,
well, that was a conversation we had, was like, she needs to be sexual, so what is that for her? And then when Lindsey was like, well, what about like La Senza girl underwear? I was like, oh, that's perfect, because it's simultaneously, it is kind of sexy, but it's also kind of terrible for the adults in the audience who recognize it, right? It's like, and for me, looking at Lindsey and La Senza girl makes me deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Because I have those, like, you know, it's the, like, conflation of, like, it's the only time in the show where I see her as being as young as the character is.
Right.
And I realize how wrong the course of action David's about to take is. And so I think for that purpose, it tells the story beautifully.
Yeah, I think it works.
But we never wanted you to do anything that made you uncomfortable as well. Like, we're not about that.
No.
Except for, you know, my nudity. In the play that was tragically cut.
That
it
makes
was,
me uncomfortable
when
you're naked.
I don't actually see how that came into play.
No, it was just one rehearsal, guys.
Good job. We thought we'd have a naked
No, are you kidding? I sleep in pants.
I'm trying to I had a thought and it went away. I have thoughts too. So again, the play, you're remounting it. Some stuff that wasn't in the play in Hamilton. Here's a question. So this play won the playwriting contest in Hamilton.
Yes.
For Hamilton Fringe.
Yes.
Is there a reason why? And I know this is not like a diss on Hamilton, but why Hamilton?
It actually was one night. I was sitting around with Brandon, our director.
Describe Hamilton.
Indulging in some adult beverages. And Brandon was like, do you know Hamilton Fringe has a playwriting contest? Because I was bitching about how I missed the deadline for the Toronto Fringe playwriting contest. And I was like, I'm so stupid, I should have done it, but And then he was like, you know Hamilton Fringe has one.
Right.
And I was like, well, why would I do that? And he's like,
that's a typical Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, Hamilton with the mole people? No. And then, I mean, big ups to Hamilton, because we went there and actually had a really good time.
Hamilton.
And yeah, like it's such a nice city with such a refreshingly open and cool arts community. But yeah, I didn't know. So then we pull it up on the computer and he's like, see, look, there's like a prize and you get to do your show at the Fringe and it'd be like a free workshop for the show. We could decide if we want to do it later. And it's like, oh yeah, we got nothing to lose. Sure, why not? And then, you know, I was super surprised when we won. I had no idea. Claire called me as I was walking down Bloor one day. He's like, hi man, it's Claire. And I was like, hi Claire, because we'd done a show together. And I was like, hi Claire, why are you calling me? How do you have this number? I was an assistant director on that show. I didn't think we were particularly close. She's like, I'm the artistic director of Hamilton Fringe. You won the playwriting contest. Oh!
Great.
Awesome, thanks!
I'll be there.
Yeah, and so our director's a really proud Hamiltonian, and he hates when we rip on Hamilton. And so this was, I think, also his way of proving that Hamilton's cool, too.
And it was cool. It had some great tacos.
Really
it had some great meals. I had some great meals in Hamilton.
Had some really good meals. Had some really good fun.
Yeah.
Met our director's parents.
They
who
are.
I would like to go on record as saying are really pleasant lunatics.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. They were great.
Did you guys travel into Hamilton?
Every day.
Yeah.
Because we all have jobs, and we all had different hours we were working that week.
And we had one car. So that way it was so impossible for us to kind of get into the festival. When it's in Toronto, I find I'm so invested in it. I'm there every night, and that's what you do for 10 days. But with Hamilton, it was kind of a shame because we were commuting, and we were like, well, someone needs to drive home, so we don't want to stay at the bar too late, because then that's just not fair for them, or someone has to be up early, or
somebody's got work later that night.
Me, always.
So, there was a whole bunch of times, and we would end up having to leave late because
in traffic.
Our stage manager, Hannah, who drove the car, would have work in the morning, and it was just like we
commuted.
It was fun. We learned about trans GTA traffic.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a mysterious madness.
Yeah.
It actually took me on the first day when there was the...
we were texting on the Facebook.
Yeah. It was like 5 hours.
Yeah,
it
was ridiculous.
Yeah, from my place at Young and Edmonton to Hamilton.
Oh, it was brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was...
I mean, I took time off from my job so I could live in Toronto. Of course, I did that, and then I found out that there's nothing for most of during the week. During the day, nothing starts until 5. I was like, oh, so what am I doing in Hamilton for 8 hours a day? All right, fuck it.
Walk around.
I was like, I wanted to not have, number one, not deal with that commute ever again, but also just to, as much as possible, do what I would do in Toronto and be part of the festival.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought about taking the show to other festivals? Other fringes?
We have talked about it.
We have.
I got an email today about the lottery fringe thing, and I was like, oh,
because it's such a portable show for us.
Yeah.
We just need a cube van to do the show, right?
And then,
it's just the 10 chairs.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's super portable, and we have talked about it, but we're designing this new fringe show now, and so it's I don't know. I think we'll end up unless the Toronto run ends up being well received and there's interest in doing it again, then I think we should, because it's a really fun show for us. But we also have 7 members in our theater company, and they probably want to act at some point.
They want to do a thing.
Yeah. So
this one,
we should probably move on.
Came up because we won the lottery,
we won
not the lottery, the play contest in Hamilton, and then it just kind of made sense to do it here. Because we had so many people who couldn't make it out, bless our friends who did. That was great, but there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I wish you'd do it in Toronto. And then when the venue magically came together, and they're lovely there. I love talking to them. They're so easygoing. Yeah. I was like, great, okay.
And it's already built.
Yeah.
It's
already done. Yeah. Don't have to learn the lines, except I got 2 new paragraphs.
And we might actually, get into a run of a show and learn new and interesting things about it. Because that's one of the other tragedies of indie theater, is that you do all this work and then you do 10, 15 shows, and then it's gone, and you're like, I didn't learn anything. You think about Hamilton's on its 9 billionth performance at this point.
Yeah.
How much more do they know about the show? And I'd love to know that.
It's not very often in life that you get to remount a show.
No.
This will be my 3rd show that I've remounted.
Yeah.
Out of I don't know, 40 productions I've done.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool when you get to do it, because little things change, and it just keeps it exciting, and you never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, it's really cool when you get to do that. When you get to take a show and do something with it that you do it more than you ever thought possible.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to do that with a couple of shows. Take a show to 4 fringe festivals, and by the time you get to that last one, you know that show so well.
Yeah.
And it almost gets difficult to not do that show anymore, because you've been doing it for the whole summer.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to do it in this space, because the space is a lot more intimate. Our space in Hamilton was, for us, way too big. We would have been happy with 1/3 of that space.
Yeah.
And so it would be really nice to go in a really intimate, which is where most of our productions are. They've always been in really small quarters.
Well, yeah, we always do big things, small rooms.
Yeah. So I'm excited to be even closer and really with the audience of we're in this together, people.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost at the end of our time, so I want to thank you all for coming on and talking.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for